Gout. Gout just did something even Usain Bolt never did as a teenager, and now the entire track world is asking one question. Are we watching the birth of the next sprint king, or is the hype already out of control? Because what this 18-year-old just did in Australia wasn't supposed to happen. Not after losing his previous race. Not while carrying the pressure of an entire nation. And definitely not while chasing a time that only the greatest sprinters in history have ever touched. Yet somehow, Gout Gout crossed the finish line in 19.67 seconds. A legal time, a national record, a world under 20 record, and a performance that officially moved him ahead of a teenage Usain Bolt. Think about that for a second. The greatest sprinter who has ever lived never ran this fast as a teenager. That's why this performance has divided the athletics world. Some fans are already calling Gout the next Usain Bolt. Others say it's way too early, because records at 18 don't guarantee Olympic gold. But one thing nobody can argue with, the stopwatch never lies. Just 2 weeks earlier, Gout walked off the track in Melbourne after losing the 200 meters to Australia's fastest man, Lachlan Kennedy. It wasn't a crushing defeat, just 0.05 of a second, 20.43 to 20.38. Most young athletes would have blamed the rain, made excuses, or carried that disappointment into the next race. Gout did none of that. Instead, he wrote one number in his notebook, 19.75. That was the time he believed he could run. Every day, leading into the Australian Championships in Sydney, he repeated that number to himself. Not as a dream, as a promise. When the gun fired, things didn't start perfectly. Aidan Murphy exploded around the bend and stayed right with him entering the home straight. For a moment, it looked like another close race. Then Gout did what has become his trademark. He found another gear. While everyone else began slowing down, he kept accelerating. Stride after stride, he pulled away. When he crossed the line, the stadium fell silent. Then erupted 19.67 seconds. The fastest legal 200 meters ever run by an Australian. The fastest under-20 time ever officially recorded, and the first Australian in history to legally break the 20-second barrier. Suddenly, this wasn't just an Australian story anymore. It became a global one. Because Gout didn't just break his own national record, he erased Arian Knighton's official world under-20 record. He moved ahead of Usain Bolt on the all-time junior rankings. And if this performance had happened in an Olympic final, it would have won a bronze medal. At just 18 years old. But here's the scariest part. His coach says the real Gout Gout hasn't even arrived yet. He's only recently finished growing. He's still developing physically, and they're deliberately holding him back to avoid injury. Think about that. The fastest teenager in history might still be years away from his peak. Of course, there's still work to do. He was eliminated in the World Championship semifinals last year. Senior championships are a completely different challenge. Running one historic race is one thing, winning Olympic gold is another. But one thing is now impossible to ignore. Gout Gout isn't chasing history anymore. He's already making it. And if this is what he's doing at 18, the rest of the sprint world should be very worried, because the next chapter of sprinting may have already begun. The sprint world has a problem, because a kid from Wisconsin just ran 9.89 seconds. And now people are asking a question that makes track fans very uncomfortable. Can Sam Blascowski actually beat Noah Lyles? Before you type no in the comments. Think about this. 6 months ago, Sam Blascowski was working at an airport. Today, he's the fastest white sprinter in human history. Not the fastest American white sprinter. Not the fastest this year. The fastest ever. A 1.5. Year record is gone. Destroyed. And the craziest part, after running 9.89 seconds, Sam wasn't celebrating like someone who had just achieved the impossible. Instead, he looked straight into the camera and basically said, "We're not even close to our peak yet." Wait, so you're telling me a guy who just became the fastest white man ever, a guy who suddenly sits among the fastest humans on Earth, thinks he's still got more? That statement instantly split the sprint world into two groups, the believers and the doubters, because history tells us something important. Every few years, an unknown athlete explodes onto the scene with a shocking time. The internet loses its mind. The hype train leaves the station. Then reality hits. They step onto a Diamond League track. They face Olympic champions, world medalists, men who have proven themselves under pressure. And suddenly, those magical times disappear. That's exactly why Sam's next race might be the most important race of his life. Because the names waiting for him aren't random sprinters. They're killers. Noah Lyles, Marcel Jacobs, Oblique Seville, Ferdinand Omanyala. Men who have run 9, 8. Men who have won Olympic gold. Men who have stood on podiums with the entire world watching. These aren't athletes that inspire careers. These are athletes that end careers. And now, Sam wants to stand beside them. But here's where the story gets interesting. Sam isn't walking into this fight completely blind. Every day in Florida, he trains with some of the fastest men alive. Olympic medalists, world-class sprinters, athletes who know exactly what elite speed looks like. So when he eventually steps onto a Diamond League start line, he's not seeing superheroes. He's seeing the same type of athletes he competes against in training every single week. That changes everything. Because maybe the 9.89 wasn't a miracle. Maybe it wasn't luck. Maybe it wasn't a one-day wonder. Maybe it's the beginning. Or maybe the entire sprint world is about to discover that Tennessee was the best race he'll ever run. That's the reality nobody knows. Not the fans. Not the experts. Not even Sam himself. What we do know is this. Only a tiny handful of human beings in history have ever run faster than 9.89 seconds. And somehow, a kid who learned sprint mechanics from YouTube videos, a kid who got 0 Division I offers, a kid who worked at an airport to fund his dream, just joined that club. Now comes the hard part. Doing it again. Because records get attention. Diamond League medals earn respect. And beating the fastest men alive changes everything. The question isn't whether Sam Blascowski belongs in the conversation anymore. The 9.89 already answered that. The real question is this. When he finally lines up against Noah Lyles, Ferdinand Omanyala, Oblique Seville, and the world's elite, will he shock the world again? Or will the hype disappear as fast as it arrives? We're about to find out. And if Sam really hasn't peaked yet, the sprint world might be in serious trouble.